continuing those extraordinary twins. They told you that, did they? Said the justice with interest. Well, no. I don't know that they told me, but that's neither here nor there. I know without that at dinner yesterday, Angelo was as tired as a dog. And yet Luigi wouldn't lend him the legs to go upstairs and take a nap with. Did he ask for them? Let me see. It seems to me that somehow that Aunt Betsy, do you remember whether he... Never mind about what Aunt Betsy remembers. She is not a witness. We only want to know what you remember. Yourself, said the judge. Well, it does seem to me that you are the most cantankerously particular about a little thing, Sim Robinson. Why, when I can't remember a thing myself, I always... please go on. Now how can she, when you keep fussing at her all the time, said Aunt Betsy. Why, with a person pecking at me that way, I should get that fuzzled and fuddled that... She was on her feet again, but Alan coaxed her into her seat once more, while the court squelched the mirth of the house. Then the judge said, Madame, do you absolutely know, independent of everything, these gentlemen have told you that the power over their legs passes from one to the other regularly every week. Regularly? Bless your heart. Regularly ain't any name for exactness of it. All the big cities in Europe used to set their clocks by it. Laughter suppressed by the court. How do you know? That is the question. Please answer it, plainly, squarely. Don't you talk to me like that, Sim Robinson. I won't have it. How do you know, indeed? How do you know that what you know? Because somebody told you? You didn't invent it out of your own head, did you? Why, these twins are the truthfulest people in the world, and I don't think it becomes you to sit up there and throw slurs at them when they haven't been doing anything to you. And they're orphans besides, both of them, all. But Aunt Betsy was up again now, and both old ladies were talking at once and with all their might. But as the house was weltering in a storm of laughter, and the judge was hammering his desk with an iron paperweight, one could only see them talk, not hear them. At last, when quiet was restored, the court said, Let the ladies retire, but, Your Honor, I have the right, in the interest of my clients, to cross-examine. You'll not need to exercise it, Mr. Wilson. The evidence is thrown out, said Aunt Patsy, ruffled. And what's it thrown out for? I'd like to know. And so would I, Patsy Cooper. It seems to me that if we can save these poor persecuted strangers, it is our bounden duty to stand up here and talk for them till... There, do sit down. It cost some trouble and a good deal of coaxing, but they were got into their seats at last. The trial was soon ended. Now, the twins themselves became witnesses in their own defense. They established the fact upon oath that the leg power passed from one to the other every Saturday night at 12 o'clock sharp, but on cross-examination, their counsel would not allow them to tell whose week of power the current week was. The judge insisted upon their answering, and proposed to compel them, but even the prosecution took fright, and came to the rescue then, and helped to stay the sturdy jurist's revolutionary hand. So the case had to go to the jury with that important point hanging in the air. They were out an hour and brought in this verdict. We the jury do find that 1, as the assault was committed as charged, 2, that it was committed by one of the persons accused, he having been seen to do it by several credible witnesses. 3, but that his identity is so merged in his brother's that we have not been able to tell which was him. We cannot convict both, for only one is guilty. We cannot acquit both, for only one is innocent. Our verdict is that justice has been defeated by the dispensation of God, and acts to be discharged from further duty. This was read aloud in court and brought out a burst of hearty applause. The old ladies made a spring at the twins and congratulated them, but were gently disengaged by Mr. Wilson and softly crowded back into their places. The judge rose in his little tribune, laid aside his silver-bowed spectacles, reached his gray hair up with his fingers, and said with dignity and solemnity, and even with a certain pathos, "In my experience on the bench, I have not seen justice bow her head in shame in this court until this day. You little realize what far-reaching harm has just been wrought here under the fickle forms of law. Imitation is the bane of courts. I thank God that one is free from the contamination of that vice, and in no long time you will see the fatal work of this hour seized upon by the profligate so-called guardians of justice in all the wide circumstances of the planet, and perpetuated in their pernicious decisions. I wash my hands of this iniquity. I would have compelled these culprits to expose their guilt, but support failed me where I had the most right to expect aid and encouragement, and I was confronted by a law made in the interest of crime, which protects the criminal from testifying against himself. Yet, I had precedents of my own, whereby I had set aside that law on 2 different occasions. And thus succeeded in convicting criminals, to whose crimes there were no witnesses but themselves. What have you accomplished this day? Do you realize it? You have set adrift, unadmonished, in the community 2 men endowed with an awful and mysterious gift, a hidden and grisly power for evil, a power by which each in his turn may commit crime after crime of the most heinous character, and no man be able to tell which is the guilty, or which the innocent party, in any case of them all. Look to your homes, look to your property, look to your lives, for you have need. Prisoners at the bar, stand up. Through suppression of evidence, a jury of your countrymen have been obliged to deliver a verdict concerning your case, which stinks to heaven with the rankness of its injustice. But by its terms, you, the guilty one, go free with the innocent, depart in peace, and come no more. The costs devolve upon the outraged plaintiff. Another iniquity the courts stand dissolved. Almost everybody crowded forward to overwhelm the twins and their counsel with congratulations, but presently the 2 old aunties dug the duplicates out and bore them away in triumph through the hurrahing crowd, while lots of new friends carried Pudd'nhead Wilson off to tavern-ward to feast him and wet down his great and victorious entry into the legal arena. To Wilson, so long familiar with neglect and depreciation, this strange new incense of popularity and admiration was a fragrance blown from the fields of paradise. A happy man was Wilson. Chapter 6. The Amazing Duel. A deputation came in the evening and conferred upon Wilson the welcome honor of a nomination for mayor, for the village has just been converted into a city by charter. Tom skulks out of challenging the twins. Judge Driscoll thereupon challenges Angelo, accused by Tom of doing the kicking. He declines, but Luigi accepts in his place against Angelo's timid protest. It was late Saturday night, nearing 11. The judge and his second found the rest of the war party at the further end of the vacant ground near the haunted house. Pudd'nhead Wilson advanced to meet them and said anxiously, "I must say a word in behalf of my principal's proxy, Count Luigi, to whom you have kindly granted the privilege of fighting my principal's battle for him. It is growing late, and Count Luigi is in great trouble lest midnight shall strike before the finish. It is another testimony, said Howard approvingly. That young man is fine all through. He wishes to save his brother the sorrow of fighting on the Sabbath. Well, the biblical Sabbath is sunset Friday to sunset Saturday. And he's right. It is the right and manly feeling and does him credit. We will make all possible haste. Wilson said, there is also another reason, a consideration in fact, which deeply concerns Count Luigi himself. These twins have command of their mutual legs. Turnabout, Count Luigi is in command now, but at midnight possession will pass to my principal, Count Angelo, and well you can foresee what will happen. He will march straight off the road and carry Luigi with him. Why, sure enough, cried the judge, we've heard something about the extraordinary law of their being. Already, nothing very definite. It is true as regards dates and durations of power, but I see it is definite enough as regards tonight. Of course, we must give Luigi every chance, omit all the ceremonial possible, gentlemen, and place us in position. The seconds at once tossed up a coin. Howard won the choice. He placed the judge 60 feet from the haunted house, and facing it, Wilson placed the twins within 15 feet of the house, and facing the judge, necessarily. The pistol case was opened, and the long, slim tubes taken out. When the moonlight glinted from them, a shiver went through Angelo. The doctor was a fool, but a thoroughly well-meaning one, with a kind heart and a sincere disposition to oblige, but along with it, an absence of tact, which often hurt its effectiveness. He brought his box of lint and bandages and asked Angelo to feel and see how soft and comfortable they were. Angelo's head fell over against Luigi's. In a faint and precious time was lost in bringing him to, which provoked Luigi into expressing his mind to the doctor with a good deal of vigor and frankness. After Angelo came to, he was so weak that Luigi was obliged to drink a stiff horn of brandy to brace him up. The seconds now stepped at once to their post, halfway between the combatants, one of them on each side of the line of fire. Wilson was to count, very deliberately, 1, 2, 3, fire, stop, and the duelists could bang away at any time they chose during that recitation, but not after the last word. Angelo grew very nervous when he saw Wilson's hand rising slowly into the air as a sign to make ready, and he leaned his head against Luigi's and said, "Oh, please take me away from here. I can't stay. I know I can't. What in the world are you doing? Straighten up. What's the matter with you? You're in no danger. Nobody's going to shoot you. Straighten up, I tell you." Angelo obeyed, just in time to hear one bang. Just one report, and a little tuft of white hair floated slowly to the judge's feet in the moonlight. The judge did not swerve. He still stood erect and motionless, like a statue, with his pistol arm hanging straight down at his side. He was reserving his fire. 2, 3, fire. Up came the pistol arm instantly. Angelo dodged with the report. He said, "Ouch," and fainted again. The doctor examined and bandaged the wound. It was of no consequence, he said. Bullet through fleshy part of arm. No bones broken. The gentleman was still able to fight. Let the duel proceed. Next time, Angelo jumped just as Luigi fired, which disordered his aim and caused him to cut a chip out of Howard's ear. The judge took his time again. When he fired, Angelo jumped and got a knuckle skinned. The doctor inspected and dressed the wounds. Angelo now spoken out and said he was content with the satisfaction he had got, and if the judge but Luigi shut him roughly up and asked him not to make a donkey of himself, adding, "And I want you to stop dodging and take a great deal too prominent a part in this thing for a person who has got nothing to do with it. You should remember that you are here only by courtesy and are without official recognition. Officially, you're not even here at all. Officially, you do not even exist. To all intents and purposes, you are absent from this place, and you ought, for your own modesty's sake, to reflect that it cannot become a person who is not present here to be taking this sort of public and indecent prominence in a matter in which he is not in the slightest degree concerned. Now, don't dodge again. The bullets are not for you, they are for me. If I want them dodged, I will attend to it myself. I never saw a person act so Angelo saw the reasonableness of what his brother had said, and he did try to reform, but it was of no use. Both pistols went off at the same instant, and he jumped once more. He got a sharp scrape along his cheek from the judge's bullet, and so deflected Luigi's aim that his ball went wide and chipped a flake of skin from Pudd'nhead Wilson's chin. The doctor attended to the wounded. By the terms, the duel was over, but Luigi was entirely out of patience and begged for one more exchange of shots, insisting that he had no fair chance on account of his brother's indelicate behavior. Howard was opposed to granting so unusual a privilege, but the judge took Luigi's part and added that indeed he himself might fairly be considered entitled to another trial, because although the proxy on the other side was in no way to blame for the judge's humiliatingly resultless work, the gentleman with whom he was fighting this duel was to blame for it, since he had played no advantages and had held his head still. His proxy would have been disposed of early, he added. Count Luigi's request for another exchange is another proof that he is a brave and chivalrous gentleman, and I beg that the courtesy he asks may be accorded to him. I thank you most sincerely for this generosity, Judge Driscoll, said Luigi with a polite bow, and moving to his place. And then he added to Angelo, "Now hold your grip, I tell you, and I'll land him sure." The men stood erect, their pistol arms at their sides. The 2 seconds stood at their official posts. The doctor stood 5 paces in Wilson's rear with his instruments and bandages in his hands. The deep stillness, the peaceful moonlight, the motionless figures made an impressive picture, and impending fatal possibilities augmented this impressiveness to solemnity. Wilson's hand began to rise, slowly, higher, still higher. In another moment, boom! The first stroke of midnight swung up. Out of the distance, Angelo was off like a deer. "Oh, you unspeakable traitor," wailed his brother, as they went soaring over the fence. The others stood, astonished and gazing, and so stood, watching that strange spectacle until distance dissolved it and swept it from their view. Then they rubbed their eyes like people waking out of a dream. "Well, I've never seen anything like that before," said the judge. "Wilson, I am going to confess now that I wasn't quite able to believe in that leg business, and had a suspicion that it was a put-up convenience between those twins. And when Count Angelo fainted, I thought I saw the whole scheme. Thought it was pretext. Number 1, and would be followed by the others till 12 o'clock should arrive, and Luigi would get off with all the credit of seeming to want to fight, and yet not have to fight after all. But I was mistaken. His pluck proved it. He's a brave fellow, and did want to fight. There isn't any doubt about that," said Howard, and added in a grieved tone, "But what an unworthy sort of Christian that Angelo is. I hope and believe there are not many like him. It is not right to engage in a duel on the Sabbath. I could not approve of that myself, but to finish one that has been begun, that is a duty, let the day be what it may." They strolled along, still wondering, still talking. "It is a curious circumstance," remarked the surgeon, halting Wilson a moment to paste some more court plaster on his chin, which had gone to leaking blood again, "that in his duel neither of the parties who handled the pistols lost blood, while nearly all the persons present in the mere capacity of guests got hit. I have not heard of such a thing before. Don't you think it unusual?" "Yes," said the judge, "it has struck me as peculiar and unfortunate. I was annoyed at it all the time. In the case of Angelo, it made no great difference, because he was in a measure concerned, though not officially, but it troubled me to see the seconds compromised, and yet I knew no way to mend the matter." "There was no way to mend it," said Howard, whose ear was being readjusted now by the doctor. "The code fixes our place, and it would not have been lawful to change it. If we could have stood at your side or behind you or in front of you, but it would not have been legitimate, and the other parties would have had a just right to complain of our trying to protect ourselves from danger. Infractions of the code are certainly not permissible in any case whatever. Wilson offered no remarks. It seemed to him that there was very little place here for so much solemnity, but he judged that if a duel where nobody was in danger or got crippled, but the seconds and the outsiders had nothing ridiculous about it. For these gentlemen, his pointing out that feature would probably not help them see it, he invited them in to take a nightcap, and Howard and the judge accepted. But the doctor said he would have to go and see how Angelo's principal wound was getting on. It was now Sunday, and in the afternoon Angelo was to be received into a Baptist communion by immersion, a doubtful prospect, the doctor feared. Chapter 7. Luigi Defies Galen. When the doctor arrived at Aunt Patsy Cooper's house, he found the lights going and everybody up and dressed in a great state of solicitude and excitement. The twins were stretched out on a sofa in the sitting room. Aunt Patsy was fussing at Angelo's arm. Nancy was flying around under her commands. The two young boys were trying to keep out of the way and always getting in order to see and wonder. Rowena stood apart, helpless with apprehension and emotion, and Luigi was growling in unappeasable fury over Angelo's shameful flight. As has been reported before, the doctor was a fool, a kind-hearted and well-meaning one, but with no tact, and as he was by long odds the most learned physician of the town, and was quite aware of it, and could talk his learning with ease and precision, and liked to show off when he had an audience, he was sometimes tempted into revealing more of a case than was good for the patient. He examined Angelo's wound, and was really minded to say nothing for once. But Aunt Patsy was so anxious and so pressing that he allowed his caution to be overcome, and proceeded to empty himself as follows, with scientific relish. Without going too much into detail, madame, for you would probably not understand it anyway, I concede that great care is going to be necessary here, otherwise exudation of the esophagus is nearly sure to ensue, and this would be followed by ossification and extradition of the ossification and extradition of the maxillaris superioris, which must decompose the granular surfaces of the great infusorial ganglionic system, thus obstructing the action of the posterior varioloid arteries and precipitating compound strangulated cirrhosis of the valvular tissues, and ending unavoidably in the dispersion and combustion of the marsupial fluxes and the consequent embrocation of the bicuspid populo redax referendum vertebrorum. A miserable silence followed. Aunt Patsy's heart sank. The pallor of despair invaded her face. She was not able to speak. Poor Rowena wrung her hands in privacy and silence, and said to herself in bitterness of her young grief, "There is no hope. It is plain there is no hope." The good-hearted Negro wench, Nancy, paled to chocolate, then to orange, then to amber, and thought to herself with yearning sympathy and sorrow, "Po thing, he ain't gwain to last through the half o' dat." Small Henry choked up and turned his head away to hide his rising tears, and his brother Joe said to himself with a sense of loss, "The baptizing's busted, that sure." Luigi was the only person who had any heart to speak. He said a little bit sharply to the doctor, Well, there's nothing to be gained by wasting precious time. Give him a barrel of pills. I'll take them for him." "You?" asked the doctor. "Yes." "Did you suppose he was going to take them himself?" "Why, of course." "Well, it's a mistake. He never took a dose of medicine in his life. He can't." "Well, upon my word, it's the most extraordinary thing I ever heard of." "Oh," said Aunt Patsy, as pleased as a mother whose child is being admired and wondered at, "you'll find that there's more about them that's wonderful than their just being made in the image of God and the rest of his creatures. Now, you can depend on that, I tell you." And she wagged her complacent head. like one who could reveal marvelous things if she chose. The boy Joe began. Why, Ma, that ain't made in... You shut up and wait till you're asked, Joe. I'll let you know when I want help. Are you looking for something, Doctor? The doctor asked for a few sheets of paper and a pen and said he would write a prescription, which he did. It was one of Galen's, in fact. It was Galen's favorite, and had been slaying people for 16,000 years. Galen used it for everything, applied it to everything, and said it would remove everything, from warts all the way through to lungs, and it generally did. Galen was still the only medical authority recognized in Missouri. His practice was the only practice known to the Missouri doctors, and his prescriptions were the only ammunition they carried when they went out for game. By and by, Dr. Claypole laid down his pen and read the result of his labors aloud, carefully and deliberately, for this battery must be constructed on the premises by the family, and mistakes could occur for which he wrote a doctor's hand, the hand from which the beginning of time has been so disastrous as to the apothecary and so profitable to the undertaker. Take of Apharabaca, Henbane, Corpobalsamum, each 2 drams and a half, of cloves, opium, myrrh, cyperus, each 2 drams, of opobalsamum, Indian leaf, cinnamon, zedoari, ginger, coptus, coral, cassia, euphorbium, gum, tragacanth, frankincense, styrax, calamita, Celtic, nard, spignel, heartwort, mustard, saxifrage, dill, anise, each 1 dram, of zeolalos, rheum ponticum, alepta, muscata, castor, spikenard, glangalls, apoponax, anacardium, mastique, brimstone, peony, eringo, pulp of dates, red and white, hermodactyls, roses, thyme, acorns, pennyroyal, gentian, the bark of the root of mandrake. Mandrake and henbane are 2 things in particular. There you have to be careful of your consumption of. So I'm not recommending this formula for germander, valerian, bishop's weed, bayberries, long and white, pepper, xylobalsamum, xylobalsamum, I think is how to say it, carnabadium, macadonian, parsley seeds, lovage, the seeds of rue and sinan, of each 1.5 drams, a pure gold, pure silver, pearls not perforated, the blata byzantina, the bone of the stag's heart, each the quantity of 14 grains of wheat, of sapphire, emerald, and jasper stones, each 1 dram, of hazelnuts, 2 drams, of pellitory of Spain, shavings of ivory, calamus, odoratus, each of the quantity of 29 grains of wheat, of honey or sugar of sufficient quality. Boil down and skim off. Well, the stone things are more of a faith-based thing than anything, right? Because people's like, oh, I drink it from this stone, water with this stone. Some stuff you got to watch out for, like how the stone is sourced and all that. But there, he said, that will fix the patient. Give his brother a dipperful every 3/4 of an hour while he survives, muttered Luigi, and see that the room is kept wholesomely hot and the doors and windows closed tight. Keep Count Angelo nicely covered up with 6 or 7 blankets, and when he is thirsty, which will be frequently, moisten a rag in the vapor of the tea kettle and let his brother suck it. When he is hungry, which will also be frequently, he must Not be humored oftener than every 7 or 8 hours, then toast part of a cracker until it begins to brown and give it to his brother. That is all very well as far as Angelo is concerned, said Luigi. But what am I to eat? I do not see that there's anything the matter with you. The doctor answered, you may, of course, eat what you please. Also drink what I please, I suppose. Oh, certainly, at present. When the violent and continuous perspiring has reduced your strength, I shall have to reduce your diet, of course, and also bleed you. But there is no occasion for that yet awhile. While the bloodletting is more of a blood pressure thing than anything. But he turned to Aunt Patsy and said, he must be put to bed and sat up with, and tended with the greatest care, and not allowed to stir for several days and nights. For one, I am sacredly thankful for that, said Luigi. It postpones the funeral, and I am not to be drowned today, anyhow. Angelo said quietly to the doctor, I will cheerfully submit to all your requirements, sir, up to 2 o'clock this afternoon, and will resume them after 3, but cannot be confined to the house during that immediate hour. Why, may I ask? Because I have entered the Baptist communion, and by appointment am to be baptized in the river at that hour. Oh, insanity! It cannot be allowed. Angelo answered with placid firmness, nothing shall prevent it, if I am alive. Why consider, my dear sir, in your condition it might prove fatal. A tender and ecstatic smile beamed from Angelo's eyes, and he broke forth in a tone of joyous fervency. Ah, how blessed it would be to die for such a cause! It would be a martyrdom. But your brother, consider your brother. You'd be risking his life, too. He risked mine an hour ago, responded Angelo gloomily. Did he consider me? A thought swept through his mind that made him shudder. If I had not run, I might have been killed in a duel on the Sabbath day, and my soul would have been lost. Now, certain things not being physically available or whatnot, or being too dangerous, like why wash for a ritual if it's going to kill you? Do the ritual, or make you sick or something. Do the ritual anyways, right? But Christianity generally doesn't have this idea that doing stuff so you can survive, and making an excuse for that, or not doing stuff, Oh, don't fret. It wasn't in any danger, said Luigi irritably. They wouldn't waste it for a little thing like that. There's a glass case already for it in the Heavenly Museum, and a pin to stick it up with. Aunt Patsy was shocked and said, Louis, don't talk so, dear. Rowena's soft heart was pierced by Luigi's unfeeling words, and she murmured to herself, oh, if I had the privilege of protecting and defending him with my weak voice, but alas, his sweet boon is denied me by the cruel conventions of social intercourse. Get their bed ready, said Aunt Patsy to Nancy, and shut up the windows and doors, and light their candles, and see that you drive all the mosquitoes out of their bar, and make up a good fire in their stove, and carry up some bags of hot ashes to lay to his feet, and a shovel of fire for his head, and a mustard plaster for his neck, and some gumshoes for his ears. Luigi interrupted with temper, and added to himself, damnation, I'm going to be roasted alive. I just know it. Why, Louis, don't be quiet. I never saw such a fractious thing. A body would think that you didn't care for your brother. I don't to that extent, Aunt Patsy. I was glad the drowning was postponed a minute ago, but I'm not now. No, that is all gone by. I want to be drowned. And I guess